We're barely a quarter of the way into the year by the time you're watching this, and already the 2022 Hyundai Ioniq 5 is making an excellent case to be considered one of the highlights. It's like Hyundai took its head start in electrification it got over the last 5 years, added reasonable range and ultra-fast charging capability, and wrapped it all up in a retro-futuristic package. If you're ready to embrace EV ownership, I don't think there's a cooler way to do it right now. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. Look, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say it. I think this might be the best looking car you can buy, at least on the mainstream market and maybe even beyond. Yes, I know styling is subjective. You might not think it looks good, but I think it looks fantastic. And Hyundai says that it was inspired by the Pony. Remember that thing? Well, I think it looks a lot more like a Lancia Delta Integrale. Just take a look. The shape, as well as these lines that run down the side. They have that Integrale, those like box fenders that it had. Super cool. I really like all the parametric shapes. Check out that wheel design. Absolutely beautiful. These might be my favorite wheels on the market right now. And then these lights too, it's like an 8-bit video game. I love everything about this car except for one major problem. It's not styling related, but it is out here. Just take a look at this back window. For whatever reason, Hyundai decided not to put a wiper on this thing, and Will's gonna get in there nice and close so you can see that sort of sheen, because you can see all this snow on the ground. It's super wet. It's just below freezing. There's a lot of salt down, so all the snow is melting quickly. It's splashing up on this back window, and you can't see out of it at all. I don't understand what was going on with this decision, but it was not the right one. I gotta say, I am absolutely obsessed with the exterior styling of this Ioniq 5. It looks exactly like the concept. I love it. Now, some of the stuff I'm not so crazy about. The flush door handles, the way they tuck in. The bigger problem for me is the annoyance if you don't unlock all the doors. Now, you can set it in here, but when I picked it up, I had my camera in the back, I stopped to take some photos, and I didn't unlock the doors. So when I pushed the handle to pop it out, I actually couldn't open it. That was annoying. And they do seem kind of light and fragile. You'll know what I'm talking about if you check them out for yourself. They just don't feel quite as substantial as similar handles you get even from brands like Tesla. Those ones just have a little bit more heft to them. These feel like it wouldn't take too much effort to snap one of those off, especially in the cold like we have today. But again, that is a minor annoyance. Another one for me is the way that the door for the charge port, well, it's powered. Yeah, the novelty of it is cool, but I do worry about the longevity of that motor, especially if it's cold. If that freezes over, I can't imagine that actuator opening it and closing it properly without it breaking. But who knows, maybe I'm off track here. Anyways, let's talk about the interior. Well, it doesn't do it for me as much as the outside, but there's nothing inherently wrong with it. Now, you can get a light color in here that would help to brighten the space up a little bit. With all this black, it's a little understated. It's definitely modern, and there are some cool touches. Now, this one I'm driving, it's the top trim, long range, all-wheel drive with the ultimate package. So you do get some extras like this center console that actually slides on rails back and forth. And that part is kind of cool. Again, a novelty, but it's something you can do in an electric vehicle that you normally can't do with internal combustion powered ones because they have linkage and all kinds of stuff. Well, because there's none of that here, you don't have to worry about it. The designers could get creative, and so that is the result. But I do have to say, not stylistically speaking, but there are some definite functionality issues in here that I want to get to. Some of them, well, they're more preference than anything else, but some of them do have some implications when it comes to safety. Now, every Ioniq 5 trim does get these twin digital displays, 12.3 inches each. You can get them in other Hyundai Group products, and they work really well, especially the touchscreen. I dig it. I like the widescreen format a lot, and I also can appreciate that modern electric vehicles are all about simplicity. We can thank Tesla for piloting that. There are some physical controls in here. We'll get to those in a second, but the bigger problem for me is what's missing. because heated seats, they are standard in every Ioniq 5 trim in Canada, but there's no physical button to turn them on. I just went over this with the Ram 1500, and here we have it again. Now, if you do want to turn them on, there are a couple different ways to do it, but you still have to go through the touchscreen. So the first is you can use this icon on the screen. You can pull it up that way. But there's also this warmer button, but it's not a physical button. It's this little haptic touch panel for your climate controls. And if you tap that, it's a little shortcut to pull it up. And then likewise, you can switch to it from the climate screen, but it's not ideal that they aren't physical controls. And the even bigger one for me in here, there is no physical button for lane keep assist. That's something that I've never seen from the Hyundai group before. There's usually a button down here by the driver's left knee. Now, lane keep assist is standard, but if you want to turn it on or off, well, you have to go to this setup icon, tap that, then go to vehicle, and then scroll all the way down here till you get to lane safety, and then you can turn on a warning, a lane keep assist, or turn it off altogether. That to me, just too many steps. But an even bigger issue in here when it comes to functionality is a problem for myself as a tall guy. I got in here the other day, I was adjusting my seat, adjusting my steering wheel, getting set into a proper position, and as soon as I started to drive away, I noticed something. I can't see the speedometer from where I'm sitting. Now, I can raise or lower the steering wheel a little bit and then see it, but then it's this really awkward feeling, like when I tested that Nissan Frontier. Remember how much I complained about that steering wheel? Yeah, same problem here. So if I have it in my actual normal position with a nice little bend in my elbows, nice and tight to my sides, the proper way you should be driving, well, I cannot see the speedometer at all. That is a major problem. Now, again, this does have the ultimate package, so I have a head-up display. That's the only way I can actually see the speed. It's projected on the windshield in front of me. Otherwise, I am out of luck, and that is a huge sticking point. If you are tall, I'm 6'3", and yes, I am a little taller in the torso. If you're around my height, make sure to check it out for yourself if you're considering the Ioniq 5, because I know that that could be a deal breaker for some of you out there. Now, there are a few different ways you can get the Ioniq 5. Most trims are rear-wheel drive, and then there's a small battery pack. It's 58 kilowatt hours, and then there's a 77.4 kilowatt hour battery pack. That's what's in this one I'm driving, but this one also has a twin motor all-wheel drive system. So it has the usual electric motor up front, but another one in the back that drives the rear wheels. And it is kind of cool because I don't know if you've watched my stuff before, and you notice when I talk about modern crossovers and their all-wheel drive systems, they're usually front-wheel biased. But because this is electric and it's rear-wheel drive, that's the case here. It's a rear-biased all-wheel drive system. And if you turn traction control off, you can have yourself a little fun. And you know the whole disclaimer, professional driver, closed course. Yeah, that's what's going on there. But just wanted to show you the other thing, how quick this is to respond. Now, according to Hyundai, this thing will do the sprint to 100 kilometers an hour in about 5.1 seconds. That is quick. I don't care whether you're talking about gas-powered cars or electric ones. I think that's about as quick as a manual Volkswagen Golf R. Tons of pep. This isn't a performance vehicle, but because it has that instantaneous torque, you can get up to highway speed in no time at all. I did have it in sport mode earlier, and yeah, I have it in Eco now, but even still, if I want to add a little bit of speed, you don't hear much, but you can definitely feel it. It's a very responsive powertrain. Something I often talk about with electric vehicles, the best analogy I can think of, it's like a dimmer switch. It's not on or off, you're just controlling how much you want. That's how this accelerator pedal works. When you get on it, it's just there. But it's actually very easy to modulate as well. That's key. If you want to keep it at 52 kilometers an hour, you're not constantly playing with the pedal. It's very easy to keep it at that speed, and that is huge. And you know, that's mostly been the case with past Hyundai and Kia products, but it's definitely true here. And something that's changed a bit from past products, but I really like, you can actually do one pedal driving here. Now, I do like the 3-stage paddles that you get here. That's been the case with past products. I like that they're still here, but if you give an extra tap of this one on the left, it turns on what's called I pedal. And that means you can let your foot off and it'll just bring it to a stop all on its own. You don't have to do anything. And then when you're ready to go, just start going again. It's very smooth, and that's a great way to keep energy in the battery pack, even this big one. And that does bring me to the next crucial piece of information about this car. So this thing uses an 800-volt electrical architecture, and the only other two cars on the market right now that use the same thing, the Porsche Taycan and the Audi e-tron GT. And that means that electricity just moves a lot quicker, but also it's capable of ultra fast charging. If you hook this thing up to a 350 kilowatt DC fast charger, you can go from 10 to 80% in about 18 minutes. That is very quick, but even if you hook up to a 50 kilowatt charger, you can do that same amount of energy in about an hour. And you know, I put it to the test the other day. It is wintertime, keep that in mind. Charging is gonna take longer, but I hooked up to a 50 kilowatt station and it took me an hour and 20 minutes to go from 39% to 100%. And don't forget, the last 20% really does take the longest. The best analogy I can think of when it comes to topping up electric vehicles is it's a lot like filling an ice cube tray, right? You can fill them up, it's pretty easy. It's pretty quick to get all the low parts of the ice cube tray filled. But if you want to get them all the same level, that's what takes the longest. All that water's got to move around. That's how the battery works. There are all these individual cells. So to top them all up to their fullest potential, that's what takes the longest, and that's why that last 20% takes so long. But considering it's wintertime and I topped up all the way to 100%, an hour and 20 minutes isn't too bad. Now, official range, that's not great. It's okay by modern standards. You get about 414 kilometers to a charge with this one I'm driving. That's less than a Mustang Mach-E or a Tesla Model Y, but it's more than something like the Chevy Bolt EUV as well as the Volkswagen ID4. And the rapid charging really does help make that relatively low range not such a big deal, at least in my opinion. Now, honestly, it's not like the last Ioniq or the Kona Electric or the Niro EV that I just reviewed. Those are all built on the same platform that Hyundai developed about 5 or 6 years ago, shared with hybrid and plug-in hybrid versions. Those aren't unrefined vehicles. This is just that much smoother, that much easier to drive. I just talked about it, and I do think the dedicated battery electric platform is the big reason why. It's a skateboard-like structure. You got that battery nice and low down. And you know, to stick with that skateboard analogy, this is really like a longboard, both because of the wheelbase. Don't forget, this is the longest wheelbase Hyundai offers in North America. It's even longer than the one in the Palisade. It's 3,000 millimeters, and also the wheels are pushed so far out to the corners, but that gives you some perceived flex. If you get what I mean, it's still rigid, it's just different than those other electric models. And it does feel just a little smoother over uneven surfaces, and the suspension damping there helps too. Definitely feels like longboard wheels instead of those hard urethane ones that you get in a normal skateboard. And you know, it's very smooth. It doesn't make it perfect. You're gonna notice we're about to hit some train tracks up here. You'll notice that rigidity. Now, this camera does have pretty good stabilization, but you'll probably see me move around in my seat a lot. So here we come, a set of train tracks, slowing down. I mean, all things considered, it's not too bad. It's definitely smoother, and the suspension damping is better than the average EV in my mind. It rides like a little luxury vehicle, and the steering is great too. Now, it's obviously electrical in the sense that it has a little motor on it, but it's still a rack and pinion steering setup. It's not by wire, and it is a convincing fake. I really like the feel and feedback you get. It does make you feel like you've got a good bit of control from behind the wheel. There's just a little bit of play on center, but it's very quick to change directions. It darts around. You do feel a little body roll because of that ultra low center of gravity, but this is just such a great car to drive, and it's super quiet too. The cabin is nicely insulated. You don't hear much of anything. Yeah, when a car drives by you, especially on a day like today with all this snow out here, you can hear them drive past, but turn the stereo on, no problems whatsoever. This thing is just so nice to cruise around in. So to cover pricing, well, the Ioniq 5 starts at about 47 grand before tax, and then this one I'm driving is fully loaded. It even has a $1,000 paint job that I think looks great, and that means it's about 63 grand before tax. So that's the only way that it's more expensive than that Niro EV that I drove not too long ago. Otherwise, they're pretty much in lockstep, and the same with the new Kia electric car that's built on the same platform as this, the EV6. Well, it's about the same price throughout the lineup, but Kia just announced the Canadian pricing, and there are two GT packages that actually push the price higher than this, about a couple grand more. But I really like this, and you get just about everything you could imagine with this ultimate package, including vehicle to load. Now, essentially, it just means that you can use this thing like a mobile generator. It's about a 1.9 kilowatt inverter. So you can plug stuff like laptops, lighting, stereos. If you're camping, you can use it for that kind of stuff. There's a little outlet under the back seat. That is super cool. And then everything else, heated and ventilated front seats, heated rear seats, this massive fixed panoramic sunroof that I actually do really like, especially because it has a retractable cover. That was one complaint I had about the Mustang Mach-E. You can't do anything to actually close the ceiling if you want on a sunny day. It is tinted, but you can't close it, whereas this one you can, and I do really like that. And this thing is a lot cheaper than the Mustang Mach-E as well as the Model Y. Now, the Bolt EUV, cheaper than this. It doesn't have quite as much range. Neither does the Volkswagen ID4, but that one does come with all-wheel drive, and you don't get that with the Bolt EUV. But I do think that this has the wow factor, that bang for your buck. I really do like what you're getting for the money. And don't forget, it qualifies for a bunch of rebates. You get 5 grand off the purchase price with the federal EV rebate, as well as a bunch of provincial rebates, not here in Ontario, but Quebec, BC, and all the maritime provinces. I'm pretty sure Yukon even has a rebate as well. So you can take advantage of that. You can stack them together so you can save even more. And that's really what makes this such a compelling product, in my opinion. It's still decent value even without those rebates applied. But once you get those going, it really makes this an attractive package if you can get over those functionality issues I talked about earlier. So, you know, this thing has a long wheelbase, but it's also wide too. It's actually wider than something like the Toyota RAV4. And that means there's all kinds of room in here. And then the other thing I mentioned earlier is that Hyundai was able to get creative with the space because it didn't have to accommodate for the kind of stuff that you might expect in a conventionally powered vehicle. So you have this sliding center console that I mentioned. This seat also reclines. It's not super crazy, but it is kind of a cool gimmick to have. That's only part of the ultimate package, same with this. But anyways, more basically, you know, it still feels like a conventional vehicle in here in some ways. So like I said before, you do have some physical controls. All of these ones right here, those are for your infotainment control. There's even a shortcut button to pull up Apple CarPlay, which I love. I always mention that when I see it. But all the climate controls, look at this touch panel down here. I don't like that very much. That's how you call up your heated seats and steering wheel, as well as the climate. You can adjust all your different settings, but as far as having actual physical buttons, there are none of those for climate. But you know, when it comes to the infotainment system, it is pretty good. You have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which I like, as well as a bunch of cool settings specific to this being an electric vehicle. So you can pull this up. It'll even show you your range with and without the climate control on. And speaking of range, you know, this thing's good for about 414 kilometers in this all-wheel drive extended range format. That's better than some of the other trims. Some of them are as low as about 350 kilometers, but obviously it's wintertime, and we have to account for the effect that the cold has on the chemistry of the battery and what that means as far as range. So right now, we've been driving around. I got here this morning at 100%. We're down to 70 after about 100 kilometers. So not too bad, but my consumption rate is higher than I would like. We're at 23.4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. But then around town the other day, I was only consuming 14.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So there is a big disparity with a lot of highway driving. Again, to have that chemistry affected by the cold, you're going to notice it in the winter time. But all things considered, 414 kilometers range isn't so bad. Last thing I want to talk about in here, it always seems like automakers want to reinvent some sort of basic function in an electric vehicle. And in the case of Hyundai, it is this. This is your gear selector stock. And I'm sure you guys know Tesla borrowed a part from Mercedes-Benz that you would pull down and lift up for reverse or drive with a little button on the end to put it in park. Well, Hyundai instead decided to make it a little spinning toggle on the end. I don't like it very much because it's not all that intuitive. I've been driving around all week and I still constantly turn it to drive when I want to put it in reverse. It's not all that great, but for the most part, it does work. And then the last thing, steering wheel controls. Well, I mentioned earlier, you don't get lane keep assist controls outside of the infotainment system, but you do have Hyundai's highway driving assist right here on the steering wheel. So that'll give you some steering assist when you're cruising around out on the highway with or without adaptive cruising gauge, and that part is pretty cool. To recap, I like the Hyundai Ioniq 5's retro-futuristic styling, the ultra-fast charging capability, and the impressive ride quality. I don't like that it's a little pricey even after rebates, that lane keeping and heated seat controls can only be accessed through the touchscreen, or that the speedometer is hidden behind the steering wheel for tall drivers like me. It really does feel like Hyundai took all the lessons it learned about electrification over the last 5 years and applied them to this new Ioniq 5. Although it seems like it forgot some of the basics of user-friendliness that got the brand here in the first place, like the fact that there's no rear wiper or no physical controls for lane keep assist or the heated seats and steering wheel. Those are big problems for me. And so is the fact I can't see the speedometer from the driver's seat, although that's not necessarily something every one of you are going to encounter. And then on the other hand, I think it looks fantastic. The drive is phenomenal, and that ultra-fast charging capability really is key to the viability of an electric car like this one. And when you take it all together, those shortcomings might well be worth overlooking because of all that this car does right. You know, the year still may be young, but the Ioniq 5 makes a strong case for being one of the best cars of 2022.